Hi, glad that everyone is here today. I'm Amanda Carlson. I'm a very proud member of Columbia's admissions team. And obviously, thank you so much to everyone for tuning in. Looks like somebody's already saying that that individual is in Los Angeles. So glad that you are here. Excited to be able to share some information about the January intake at Columbia Business School. I think it's a hidden treasure that I'm glad that at least a few hundred of you are here to learn about today. And hello from Vienna, Austria. Hello to you too. So glad again that you could join us. You can see here again a little bit about what the agenda is going to be for the day and seeing from where we're going to come and then where we will wind up. And we will finish at about 1 p.m. Eastern time today. Before we move into kind of the meat of the panel, I would like for our panelists to introduce themselves so that way you will know from whom you will be hearing. And I think just the first person would be Mike, my wonderful colleague on the career side, who's also an alum from Columbia Business School. So Mike, would you mind introducing yourself, please?
Absolutely. Thanks, Amanda. So I'm Mike DeLucia, and as Amanda did say, I am a proud CBS alum myself. I'm the current executive director for international and MS career management within the Career Management Center. Just a little bit of a background on me. I definitely kind of talk about myself as being like an international American because I very much spent a great deal of my career focused on all things international, both having worked abroad in Australia and in Rome and in London, and then also from the US, but focused on international markets. Leaving CBS, I originally was at JP Morgan on the sales and trading side, but then actually made a career transition to the media and entertainment industry for many years, doing international marketing at 20th Century Fox and other things within the media space. One thing of note that I think is relevant to my coming back to CBS is something that always hung with me was I also was the MBA recruiter when I was at JP Morgan for a couple of recruiting seasons. And so love working with students and particularly MBA students and being able to share my own career transitions along the way. So thanks, everyone.
Okay, great. And next up is Gary. And Gary, one thing I just want to make sure that the audience knows about you before you give your introduction is I pulled a little nugget from your letter of recommendation, which I thought was extremely lovely and gives a little bit of insight into who you are. So your recommender, which I'm imagining you didn't have a hand in writing or reading maybe even after, but the recommender said that I know I can always depend on Gary to rise to even the most complex challenge and deliver a solution that exceeds the expectations of even the most discerning client. Gary is well capable of achieving anything he possibly sets his mind to. So Gary, we'd love to hear a little bit about you.
Wow, Amanda, it's not easy to make me blush, but I'm blushing here, so that wasn't expected. And I actually hadn't seen that recommendation or read it. So that's the first time I've heard that. And after this, I'm going to go and figure out which of my two recommenders actually wrote it and go and thank them. But anyway, hey everyone, I'm Gary. As you probably guessed by my accent, I didn't grow up in the US. So I grew up in a small town near Dublin, Ireland, and have lived in the US for probably 7 years before business school, and between New York and San Francisco. So prior to CBS, I worked in technology risk consulting at some of the world's biggest technology companies. So I was at Facebook and Google for some time. And right now I'm in cluster X22. So I'm a J-term student, having started in January of this year. From a club perspective at CBS, I'm VP of Finance at the Technology and Data Analytics Club. I'm a member of a ton of other clubs, the PE Club, Venture Capital Club, the Running Club, just to name a few. And I'm also on the board of the Sylph and Student Leadership Series, which is inviting some of the big guests that we have speak to students at CBS every year. Right now, I'm interning at a portfolio company for a private equity firm. And I'm happy to be here today, happy to answer any questions that you guys have.
All right, great. Thank you, Gary. And I can't see you blushing, by the way, at all. All right, Maria. So Maria, likewise, I took a little snippet from what your recommender had to say about you. And as I obviously know, because I had the distinct pleasure of interviewing you as part of this process, it says, she said, Maria is motivating, strategic, and a great communicator. Maria is one of the best hires I have made in my 35-year career. I have no doubt she will make a significant impact in the world. So Maria.
Wow. Well, thank you for that. Same with Gary. I know who my recommenders were, but was not sure what they, wrote down. So I was a little nervous before he started speaking. So glad it was, something good. So I'm Maria. Nice to meet everyone. Originally, I'm from Massachusetts, but I've been in New York for the past, now 12 years. I actually went to Columbia for undergrad. So I'm a huge supporter of Columbia, and truly it's honestly like the best school for me. So I'm a huge advocate for it. After school, I was a financial analyst at Time Inc. And then I pretty much moved into their sales, their advertising sales sector of the business. And then after school, I'm going to be going into real estate. And part of the clubs that I'm involved in at Columbia is I'm the VP of the Hermes Society. So speaking with prospective students like you all, as well as the Columbia Women in Business group, as well as the Real Estate Association. And so I'm part of the Y cluster for the J term, and I'm having a wonderful time. So I'm happy to, share my perspective and my thoughts.
Thank you. All right, Michelle, you're up. And your recommender had the sweetest things to say about you as well. But I think that one of the things that really kind of captured my attention when reading this was it says it's never fun to lose a star colleague. And I hope that in my own small way, I was able to contribute to Michelle's ever onward rise. At the very least, I can count myself lucky that I have made not only a great professional contact, but an even better friend. So I thought that was so nice to hear. Professional recommender.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I actually got a little bit teary-eyed. I definitely love, working with my mentors and obviously the people that I asked to write my recommendation letters. I still think very fondly of. I guess a little bit about myself. Hi, everyone. My name is Michelle Mochai. I'm originally from Bangkok, Thailand. Actually just graduated from CBS this past May. Prior to business school, I actually spent a couple years working at PricewaterhouseCoopers in their risk advisory practice before making the move into tech by going to Snapchat. I actually, since graduating, I have since started my full-time job, now work in the strategy and operations team at LinkedIn. And so I'm here to hopefully share about, how much fun business school was even during the pandemic, and, offer some piece of advice when it comes to recruiting. So good to meet everyone here.
All right, thank you. So moving on from the introductions, I'm just going to kind of give a little bit of an overview of what does the January intake look like, and kind of give folks, hopefully give you an understanding of what it means to be a student in the January intake. So generally speaking, we have about 200 to 210 students who enter in the January intake. You will go through the program in 4 consecutive terms. So for the first term, you'll be taking classes within the core curriculum. So those traditional MBA classes, lead, strategy, accounting, corporate finance, marketing, data analytics, etc., operations. You'll be taking these core classes for that first term in the spring semester from January until May. And then from May until June, May until July, you'll be going through your summer term, your term 2, and during that time, you'll be taking both core and elective classes. One of the really nice parts about the January intake is that you do have the option to take classes in a variety of formats, not just on the Monday, Wednesday schedule or a Tuesday, Thursday schedule, but you can also take classes in a block week format, meaning that these classes are offered for 4 or 5 consecutive days in one particular week. So you would be in class for the entire week, and that would be a full 3 credit class. At the end of the summer, like Gary is doing right now, you could potentially pursue a smaller summer internship that would not be found through the on-campus recruiting process. But I think some of our January students do tend to be somewhat, I think, very assertive in trying to find these really great opportunities, really small opportunities, again, not necessarily through the Office of Career, the Career Management Center, but they can do that on their own through a great deal of grit and hustle. And then during the third and fourth terms, you'll be wrapped into the larger graduating class of the folks who started in January, and you'll take the elective classes. And so you'll be doing that through your third term of electives and your fourth term of electives as well, graduating in 16 months, again, having gone through that 4-term cycle, 4 consecutive terms of study. So again, the real difference is that formal summer internship is not something that the January students would generally pursue. Here is an example of what a summer term may look like. So you can see that you could be somewhat potentially creative in terms of how it is that you're scheduling your classes. So I mentioned the block week format before. You may have the opportunity to take a block week in that first week of May, thereby kind of reducing what that course load would look like throughout the A term and then the rest of the B term. So you could potentially take elective number 1 in the May block week and then take electives 2 and 3 on that Monday, Wednesday, or Tuesday, Thursday schedule, or take a 3-hour class that lasts, that takes 1 time per week. During your B term, generally speaking, again, if we're using this year as a guide, there would be 4 consecutive weeks where you could pursue different block week electives. And so basically what you could do is you could take one the week after the 4th of July here in New York. You could take that. You could have a week off the following week, and then you could take an elective again 2 weeks later. You could do 2 block weeks back to back. You could actually have a break between June 17th and resume classes on July 19th. There's a great deal of choice and flexibility with how it is that you do choose to pursue the electives that are offered at Columbia. So I think that that's something that is pretty special about the January intake. Again, that choice and flexibility that is available to you. Move to the next slide, please. So just want to make sure to mention the January application is open. It's the same application as that for the August intake. The final deadline is in October, and we do have a rolling admissions process, meaning that we review applications in the order in which they are submitted. We have already started accepting people into the January class. So the class is already kind of that core of the class is already being formed. There are still plenty of spaces that are available for the January intake. And while we do let people know that with rolling admissions, we encourage you to apply well before a stated deadline, I think using history as a guide, the bulk of our applicants for the January intake do tend to come in right around that final deadline in October. I think Michelle and Gary, you both said that you had applied a little bit closer to the deadline, if not on the deadline. So with rolling admissions, I know Maria applied a little bit earlier, but with rolling admissions, again, we encourage you to get an application in a little bit before that. But for the January intake, if you do apply on the deadline, generally speaking, there are plenty of spaces that are usually available for folks who apply during that time. Like the August class, our incoming classes that will go through the core are divided into groups of clusters that are groups of about 70 to 75 students, again, with whom you would take the bulk of your core courses. But for January, basically you will have 3 clusters during the incoming class: cluster X, cluster Y, and cluster Z. Another just distinctive characteristic for those folks who will be entering this January of 2022, you will be the first group of students to have all 4 of your terms of study, all 16 months, I'll say, up in our new Manhattanville campus. The Manhattanville campus is actually, it sounds like it's, oh gosh, it's so far away from where Columbia is. Literally, it's 5 blocks away because the north end of the campus ends on 120th Street. And then the actual south end of the Manhattanville campus does start on 125th Street. So it's actually quite close. There is a shuttle in between if it's inclement weather. So we will look forward to welcoming you to the Manhattanville campus starting in early January of 2022. So can we move to the next slide now? And I'm going to turn the program over to Mike, who will share a little bit more information about the career resources that are available for students in particular who are entering in the J term.
Thank you so much, Amanda. And so I think the best way to think about this is that the Career Management Center, our mission really is about kind of partnering with students and providing a combination of things from career education and advising support, as well as sort of the support from our employer relations team, working with employers to bring job opportunities, whether it is through campus recruiting or just to our job portal at CBS, specifically for all of you, both for full-time, but also for summer opportunities, but also to in-semester internships. But I think that the key thing here is also to think it is about empowering you, that in some way you will absolutely have a great amount of support and partnership, collaboration, resources, but it is about you also driving your career forward. And really almost the way I like to think about this is it's like a buffet, and you have to determine really what you're hungry for at any point in time over the course of your time at CBS, and where you might want to take advantage of career support, which, by the way, does not just sit in CMC, but also will be across the school, whether that happen to be in their centers and programs or through the alumni network or through fellow students. There is a lot to take advantage of. But from a CMC perspective, there is a very, very robust careers curriculum. Think of it almost like another course of content that is available for you, a lot online, but a great deal is also going to be provided to you via sort of live workshop panel type of opportunities along the way. It is absolutely the same exact support, content, and everything that is provided to August entering students. The advising support, and I think it's kind of critical to think about this in different dimensions. We have full-time advisors in our office. You can think like me. We are generalists, although we might have prior industry experience, it'd be liaisons to student-run clubs. And also, we will talk to you from self-assessment all the way to managing offers and everything in between that may also be tactical. We have our Cmc Alumni Coaches. So think of them as industry practitioners. They could be 5 years out to 15 years out, and they will really give you that industry perspective. They give a lot of time. You can set one-on-one appointments with them. And of course, you can meet with any alums, but this is a really nice kind of dedicated cadre of individuals for you. And then I want to mention and call out Michelle because she also, as a J-termer, was a CMC fellow. These are about 70 of them who are, I like to think of them as peer advisors for careers who are trained through our office. They will hold one-on-one appointments with you. They will lead your career groups, that you'll have 2 sessions of career groups relatively early on, and that you can continue to meet with them for that recency factor of recruiting into certain industries that many of them would have done over the summer who are August entering, or maybe the industries that they may have come from. So think about that as different perspectives that you can tap into, not to mention our executives and residents who are our C-suite level folks who volunteer their time, and they're an amazing resource so that you can talk a little bit about the experience over the arc of one's career that they will be able to help you with. And so I want to really also call out the fact that there is a very robust recruiting platform job board that we call COIN. These are things that will be for full-time internships, everything soup to nuts across the board. And there is an on-campus recruiting, structured recruiting process for full-time as well, that there are some opportunities in the way that employers hire where they may come to campus, want to set a schedule with us as opposed to doing their own schedules or just posting an opportunity, and we absolutely help facilitate that. That is something that you can take advantage of as a J-termer in your second year. And I think for the moment, I'll stop with that.
Okay, thank you, Mike. We're going to move on now to just some prepared questions for the panelists, and hopefully we'll have a little bit of time to open it up for your Q&A, because I do see questions that are coming in through the chat. So I'm going to start with Michelle. Since you are our recent grad working in the Empire State Building, by the way, that's a fun fact that I also just learned, and I don't I've ever met anyone before who actually works in the Empire State Building. So Michelle, how did CBS align with your post-MBA goals? I know prior you were thinking, oh, do I want to look at the August intake? Do I want to look at the January intake? And as somebody who ultimately chose the J term, what are some of the benefits that you were able to experience during your time at Columbia as a J-termer?
Yeah, definitely. So for me, I think about my experience as like two components. I think when a lot of people think about MBA, they come in thinking like, oh, what's in it for me when it comes to recruiting, right? But for me, it's half people and half job. And I actually made a little list here before. In terms of people, I felt like a lot of my classmates ended up being 50% consultants. So a lot of times, like currently, like in today's job market interviews, whether or not you're going into consulting job interviews, they give you a mini case. So for me, I was really able to leverage these cluster mates who came from consulting backgrounds that weren't necessarily recruiting, and they were offering like, you know, free mock prep sessions for us. I also on the parallel was thinking about going back into my family business. So like a good, like I would say 20% of my cluster, for example, are people who work in family businesses. So I came in knowing that I wanted those kind of connections, left with those connections. So for example, one of the people on my learning team, his family, you know, owns Welch, and they wanted to expand their distribution channels to Southeast Asia, for example. And he had tapped me and said, hey, since your family, you know, works in the manufacturing industry, like, is there a way we can potentially like work together in the future? So that really helped. A broader scope when it comes to like the people category is that I think a good makeup of the class is very international. And so like in terms of like being able to get exposure from different cultures and like all that kind of stuff, they plan fun trips and you get to really know people when you go on these international trips together. As I think about like professional recruiting, I think I was able to take less time out of work since it's, you know, a year and a half. So that's, you know, something to definitely think about. And I think for me personally, my two parallel paths were in industries that didn't require traditional timelines. So what I mean is that like, you know, consulting and banking, they recruit heavily in the fall, and that's the timeline that we missed out on by entering in January. And so for people who are not recruiting in those two industries, like coming in January, you're not necessarily like missing out on a lot of the recruiting opportunities.
Thank you, Michelle. Okay, so Gary, I shared a little bit about what the cluster is, but would you mind talking about the diversity within your cluster and your learning team, and I guess in the J term as a whole?
Yeah, absolutely. So just as a quick refresher, so as Amanda mentioned, in J term, the 200 odd students are split into 3 clusters. And I think of a cluster as more like a traditional class. It's somewhere between 60 and 70 students. And these are the students that you take all of your core classes with. So initially, these are the students in J term that I would have gotten to know best straight off. We would have had some social events together. We would have, as I mentioned, taken class together. And then within the cluster, you're assigned to a learning team, which is typically 5 to 6 students from very diverse backgrounds. So CBS do a really good job of making sure each learning team isn't 5 consultants or 5 people from the US, for example. It's really diverse in every possible way. So if I take my own learning team, for example, there's 5 of us. It is 3 males, 2 females, and each of us are from a different country. So on that learning team of 5, 5 different countries represented. We also have people from really diverse backgrounds. So I came from a consulting background. We have someone who came from a family business background, and people who came from banking and various other sectors. So what I'll say, and the thing that I knew J term was going to be diverse, but I was struck with how diverse it was. as Amanda was chatting, I was going through my own cluster and trying to count the number of nationalities that's in that class of 70. And I actually stopped at 17, and I figured that was probably diverse enough to tell you guys. So, and it's really people from every corner of the world, from every possible background. But to go back to what the learning team is, that's really the people that, particularly during the core, that you end up doing most of your assignments with. So the core by its nature is a mixture of individual and group learning activities. And for those group learning activities, you do all of those throughout the first semester with your learning team. So because of that, they're the people you get to know the best, and the people you come quite close to very quickly, because really from week one, you're spending a couple of hours a week together doing all of these different assignments and different projects, and really holding each other accountable, and also being a support network for each other. I know halfway through the first term, it gets a little busy and some people find the workload challenging, and really the learning team operates as a support network for that. So I don't know if I can emphasize strongly enough how diverse both my cluster is, so cluster X22, and then also my learning team. And really what I think has been really unique and really beneficial to me was by being forced and put in a situation where I have to work with people who think differently to me, who come from a different background to me. It allows me to tailor my style to work with them. And also one thing that struck me as I was thinking back about my experience in the core is that the amount of times when we've been having a class discussion and someone in my cluster from either a different background or a different culture or another part of the world than me will share their perspective, and I'll have to take a step back and say, wow, I've never thought about it like that. That's a very different perspective to my own. And I think that was a really, really unique and valuable learning experience for me, and certainly everyone else in my cluster and in J-term.
That's wonderful. I think that's really part of that magic that happens in the class that I don't think, it's hard to describe or understand until you're sitting in that kind of magical environment. So thank you, Gary. All right. So Maria, one of the unique aspects, I think the really special aspects about Columbia is that kind of breadth of elective offerings that we're able to share with the students. And so what advice do you have for January intake students? I think, and talking about how, and thinking about maybe about how the curriculum can also open your eyes to doing something a little bit different, maybe after you finish the J-term.
Yes, so I have a little bit of a unique story. I came into J-term fully expecting to go into my family business. That's what I was focused on. And one thing that I truly fell in love with Columbia, even before, when I was applying, was just how flexible Columbia really is with their electives. You don't have to choose a major or concentration. Like, you truly can take any class that you want to take. And I think that's just so important, because going into school, right? Yes, you want to be focused, but I think what's so great is, for undergrad, you kind of had that concentration, you had that major, whereas now at business school, I mean, there's so many different areas of business that all tie together. So whether you go in consulting, private equity, accounting, like, you will use every aspect that you learn at Columbia in some degree. And I think that that's what Columbia Business School does really well, is like they understand that. So I would have felt very limited if I came in and, only took real estate classes and didn't pursue anything else. And then, I just feel like everything works so well together. So my situation, like I mentioned, I was very focused on my family business, and my uncle, who owns the family business, always told me, just keep your eyes open. And I've always had a passion for real estate. So he was like, why don't you take some real estate classes? Just, he really wanted me to get as much out of this experience as possible. So I took more real estate classes. I used the Cmc. I think I speak with them probably every month. And now I'm pursuing a career in real estate, where luckily I know I can always go back to my family business. But I firmly believe if I went to another school, I wouldn't have this opportunity. And everyone at Columbia, from the CMCs, my academic advisor, have really helped me, since this is going to be a big transition, to kind of just show me the ropes and to provide me with as much information as I possibly can get while, I kind of go on this new adventure. But one of my important classes that I took was called Real Estate Finance. It's one of your prerequisite classes for any real estate class. And I took that just because I was interested in it. And it kind of just blew my mind. I realized, okay, this is truly what I am very passionate about. And I think I'm somewhat good at it. So maybe, it's meant to be. And I truly just can't speak enough of all the varieties of electives that you can take. So not only am I taking real estate classes, but I'm taking investing classes. I'm also taking entrepreneurship classes. I come from a marketing background. So I'm actually taking a selling class as well, because I firmly believe that being a good salesperson is helpful in any industry that you're in. And so my advice to you is to, it definitely is very good to be focused, but just really don't be afraid to take classes that you normally wouldn't take. I mean, this is such a wonderful opportunity to learn from the best professors in the world, to be surrounded by peers that, are incredibly successful, come from, as Gary said, very diverse background, and who are genuinely just so kind and want to help you. Like, every day at Columbia is such a learning experience. And I would hate for someone to be so focused that they don't take advantage of all the opportunities that Columbia holds. So that would definitely be my advice.
Thank you. It is really helpful. And again, even thinking about, okay, maybe if I don't want to go into some industry, thinking about particular industry, who the guest speakers are in the class, who the faculty are. I remember I was making a selection among electives, and there was a retail leadership class that I ended up taking in my electives. I took it in the full-time program, and it's taught by a guy named Professor Mark Cohen, who used to be the CEO of Sears in Canada. And every single week, I mean, I have no interest in going into retail, but I remember every single week he would be bringing in a different CEO of a major retail company. And so just having the opportunity to hear from that kind of suite of executives was just incredible. And again, I think that that's really very special to Columbia. So thank you for sharing, Maria. All right, Mike. So I think I was clear before that January incoming students do not participate in internship on-campus recruiting for during their first year. That's not something that they will participate in. However, some January intake students will want to participate in on-campus recruiting for the second year, so for full-time offers. Can you share a little bit, please, about what that OCR on-campus recruiting process looks like for January students as they go into their second year of study, please?
Absolutely. So the thing to kind of, I want to sort of level set in some way, and I'm getting a message that my internet connection is unstable. So if I freeze or go away, I will come back as soon as possible. But on-campus recruiting for fall takes place very early, in the sense that interviews will begin at the end of September into very early October, first couple of weeks. That means applications for things related to that would be due, very early in September. And that's something to be bearing in mind. And when I think about that for J-termers, what this sort of means is you need to be strategizing based off of what you're interested in targeting and preparing towards that accordingly. So the idea is starting early, and where we see that as to be there, it's very easy to get lulled into the fact that you may not be recruiting very actively for a summer internship or all of that, and not so much focus on career stuff very early on, but it's absolutely critical to do so. And then ultimately get yourself kind of ready for interview prep. Remembering the fact that you will also be interviewing alongside people who have done structured internship recruiting, have done interview prep previously. So you really want to kind of up your game accordingly there. The flip side of this is you do not want to think that all job opportunities are through on-campus recruiting. And really it is in the scheme of things, I think this is evolving, and employers are using that channel less and less for a full-time recruiting channel. When we talk about it being a structured recruiting channel, it means these employers can predict their needs very far in advance. They know they want to hire somebody to start the following summer. And they want to also schedule that one single date, maybe with a school, and have them all lined up together. What we're seeing is a little bit of a mixed bag here. Some of these kinds of firms are using their summer internships to convert to full-time offers and may not need that full-time schedule. They may still have full-time roles that they may hire for over the year, but may not use that as much as they may have in the past. And at the same time, there are a lot of job postings that will happen along that same timeline for structured hiring. They just may not be doing it just for the schedule at CBS. So you have to keep your eyes open based off of what you're targeting. Working with advisors, we can talk to you about timelines based off of what you're going after, who's likely to recruit which ways, and then you set up accordingly. But absolutely, you have access to full-time on-campus recruiting. But I will stop there because there may be a lot of questions that come up.
Okay, so I think now what we're going to do is we're going to transition into the Q&A, and I think that Jordan is probably going to hop on and take a look at what some of the questions are that are coming in and pass those along.
I am. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. There are a lot of questions, so we'll try to get to as many of them as possible. I think some of them were covered throughout the conversation, but to kick things off, the most upvoted question was actually, can J-term students take up part-time internships? So Gary, do you want to maybe start, given you're doing a part-time internship or you're doing an internship right now, and then anyone else who wants to chime in?
Yeah, absolutely, Jordan. So as Mike outlined, so traditional internships in consulting or investment banking aren't really an option for J-term, purely because of the recruiting timeline. Outside of that, many people in my cluster and more broadly in J-term will, as Mike said, use their networks and network with alumni and I guess get more ad hoc internships. So depending on how you structure your summer semester, there is an opportunity to free up maybe 5 or 6 weeks to do a less traditional internship. And then outside of that, a lot of people in J-term will also do part-time internships in their second year, particularly in the first semester of second year. So I know at least 50% of my cluster are intending to do fall internships. So in short, yes, a lot of people do internships. It's just, if you want to do that traditional internship in consulting, perhaps with MBB or in investment banking, J-term's not for you, but that's not to say that you can't do an internship.
Yeah, I'll add on to that. I think once you're done with the core, there's a lot of flexibility to arrange your schedule in a way that will accommodate that. So for example, I think back to my summer internship last year, I was able to intern Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, and just take classes Tuesday, Thursdays. And that's, and ended up being like half time. So it really is up to you how, like, there's a lot of flexibility to allow you to do that.
I want to just mention a couple of things that are very specific also from an international student perspective. So given the fact that the J-term often is very highly international, right? So if you are coming in and by far, most people are coming in on an F1 visa. So you are eligible to do a paid internship off campus after you've completed 2 full semesters of study. I mean, talking about an internship in the US. So that earliest time would be for an in-semester internship and in the fall or spring of your second year. You are absolutely able to use your summer period and do a paid something anywhere else in the world where you may have work authorization or can get it for that period of time. Unpaid internships with international students, it is basically something that we would discuss maybe a little bit more on a one-on-one basis, but your visa allows you to do an unpaid internship that complies with all legal requirements. The thing is about sometimes employers may be offering things that don't necessarily comply with those legal requirements, and you are going to have to be careful about your own visa status and make your decisions accordingly. This is kind of be a long topic, but I just wanted to put that out there. And that the other thing I did want to mention is, as much as Gary said, definitely structured recruiting for internships does involve things like banking and consulting. It also can involve a lot of other things from mature tech to other things in the investment management space and beyond. Fall on campus recruiting, definitely investment banking is not going to be part of that, but consulting may very well be part of that. You may raise your chances if you are also going after a summer internship in that, but that happens to be an industry that does come back in many cases, and some of the mature tech companies as well. So it's just something I want to make sure that was clear, that it wasn't just going to be you had no chance for that particular industry.
All very helpful. Thank you for that. So Maria, maybe you can start off on this one, and Michelle, you might want to chime in too, based on your background. One of our attendees would like to know how J-term is suited for a family business candidate.
Yes. So I think the first thing is that there's a ton of people in my cluster, like as Gary mentioned, clusters, they're pretty much my best friends on campus. So I'm very close with them. So a lot of them come from family businesses. And I'm sorry, the question was how Columbia is suited. I'm sorry, do you mind just repeating?
Yeah, like how J-term sort of is a good option, potentially could be a good fit for folks who are considering going back to their family business or planning to go back to their family business.
It's literally like the perfect option, honestly. Like if you know you're going to your family business, you probably already know a lot about the family business before coming to Columbia, and specifically about the industry that you're going into. So those candidates usually just use the MBA to sharpen up on the skills that they're a little rusty on, or if they don't know accounting, or they don't know, particulars about strategy or things like that. But what's really great is that coming from a family business, like you're going to want to get involved in the family business as soon as possible. So there really is no need to do a summer internship, particularly if you're going into a family business. Like I said, most students have been around it their whole life, their family's involved, they know kind of the in and outs of the business. So rather than, spending a couple months in the summer doing an internship or just doing something else, I think that the goal of pretty much everyone going to business school is you want to get involved in your career as soon as possible. And what's so fantastic about the J-term compared to any other program is that you get, you graduate technically a full year earlier. So I have friends that applied at the same time I did for traditional, fall entry programs, and they haven't even started school yet. And I'm going to be graduating in May. So I think that if you know exactly what direction you're going to go into, and you don't need, we've also said there are opportunities for summer internships, so I don't want to discount that at all. But if you are, if you don't have to do a summer internship from, May to September, this is an incredible opportunity that's available nowhere else, that you can graduate a full year earlier and to get back, into the workplace even sooner, while still having all the advantages of a traditional MBA, like same professors, same courses, same career advising, same guest speakers, same clubs. Everything is exactly the same, but this truly is a very unique opportunity that I encourage you all to take advantage of, because it's just incredibly wonderful.
Yeah, definitely. Plus one about the network. For example, 12 of us started from Thailand at the same time last January, and 10 of us came from family business backgrounds. So you can just imagine how many people actually come from very different family businesses. I also want to harp on the family business curriculum. So there are classes and electives that you can take specifically geared towards family businesses. So if that's something that you're really serious about going into, I think these classes could be really beneficial. The Family Business Club is also a great resource for people who come from family business backgrounds, who are really passionate about growing that community and helping everybody else in the club network with each other. So highly recommend that. My friends are on the board of that club, and I think it's great.
Great. Thank you both. So there's a question coming in about the move to Manhattanville. So Amanda, maybe you want to take this one at first. The question is around whether the August intake students will also be taking classes up there, and if there's sort of overlap in the second year.
Yeah, so that's a great question. And yes, the whole business school, everybody is going to be moving up. So whether up to Manhattanville, so whether someone starts in August or starts in January, classes will, starting in January of 2022, all be held up on the Manhattanville campus. The difference would be that those folks who are starting this August will not take classes in Manhattanville. They will still be in the two buildings in Uris Hall and Warren Hall on the main Morningside Columbia campus. The second part of that is there overlap? I think is that meaning between the January intake and the August intake students? Yeah, once you get to your electives in your third and fourth term of study, everyone will be taking those same electives together. There certainly is also overlap when you come to school and you are participating in the different club activities, whether it's the family business club that Michelle just mentioned, or in the entrepreneurship club, or the marketing club, or Columbia Women in Business, or the Black Business Student Association. Any of the different clubs that one may choose to join, you will have overlap with the first and second year students, as well as the August and the January intake students.
Thank you for clarifying that. I know everyone's really, well, Gary and Maria, I assume you are excited to get started at Manhattanville, as I know all of the staff and faculty are very excited to move up there. Sorry, Michelle, that you won't have an opportunity to take classes there, but we'll welcome you back with open arms anytime.
Michelle's in the Empire State Building. I'm just going to go back to that.
Fair enough.
She can look out at us.
Mike, I'm wondering maybe if you can kick us off with the answer to this question, and then, Michelle, Gary, Maria, please chime in with some of your, student experience. Wait, I just lost it. Oh no, where did you go? Such a good question. Okay. It seems a lot of J-term students are from family business, financial consulting backgrounds. I was wondering what are some of the examples students are, like a field students are from other than that? So Mike, you obviously do a lot of welcome advising. Be great to hear from, anecdotally what you see people come in doing.
Yeah, I think that you probably can think of the J-term as a mix of sort of students who may be sponsored from their employer. A fair number of them might be sponsored consultants, a little bit like Michelle mentioned, people from family business, and then the rest, I would say, that is in the class. I would almost venture to say that is a completely in and of itself diverse group of people, probably by design, Amanda, from an admissions perspective. And I think maybe the commonality across them will have to be that it kind of goes into that whole idea about my career goals from what I'm doing now to where I want to go probably does not require me to do a full-time summer internship to make this transition. Right? So the J-term in an ideal world, for example, I mean, Gary mentioned something about banking. If you really, really have your heart set on investment banking and transitioning from whatever it is you're doing to that, the J-term is probably not going to be the best choice for you at all, because it is absolutely a summer internship conversion game through very structured recruiting. Whereas if you were trying to move from maybe the industry you're in to an adjacent type of company, similar industry, and maybe even shifting functions to some degree, the J-term could be perfectly the right choice for you. And also don't forget that you are able to use in-school projects, club-related stuff, in-semester internships and also maybe shorter summer internships to add to that resume to make and help you transition. So it's not in any way a way that I can say, this is what that little subset looks like, unless Amanda has more to add on that front.
No, I certainly don't, but it's so interesting. You're talking about family business isn't kind of like just, it's its own little microcosm in some ways in and of itself. It can be agribusiness, it can be retail, it can be hospitality, financial services, et cetera. I mean, so there is just, it runs the gamut with what we see. And it's also, again, Michelle could probably even give some examples just from the 12 Thai students or 10 Thai students who are coming from family businesses, how diverse they probably are in terms of the functional or industry areas. But no, I mean, it's always like mind-boggling to me when we see these amazing students come in from family businesses, just the wealth of experience. Again, going back to what kind of threading it through to what Gary was talking about with that magic that happens in the classroom conversation, again, because of how different the people's backgrounds.
Yes, and just to add, just for example, some of the family businesses that are in my cluster, one is a fashion business, so retailing. Another one is a shipping business of container shipping. So we actually did a case study in our strategy class about the shipping industry and the wealth of knowledge that the woman in my cluster, Emily, could share was incredible. And I never knew anything about shipping. And now I know just a little bit, but it was so great to have those firsthand experiences. And she was able to add so much color to an industry that I never even gave a thought about before. So those are just a few examples of how diverse even just family businesses can be.
So we only have a couple minutes left. I think it actually might be nice for all of our participants to answer this question, since you all are affiliated with CBS and either alums or current students. What's one thing you've learned at CBS, or that you did learn at CBS, that surprised you?
I can go first. Something that I really loved about CBS that really surprised me, I think, is how the cluster experience is really set up to like help you transition from like working professional back into just being in school. I think back, and I don't know if it was like because I got lucky and ended up with a really good cluster, but we ended up being a really cohesive cluster that we would do a lot of like trips and hang out all together, and it just made like transitioning back to school just that much easier. And I feel like, that's the term that some people use lightly. They're like, oh, you are assigned a cluster. But like when you're actually in the experience, you so appreciate like all the work and effort that admissions and like, peer advisors put in to make sure that your cluster, one, like, is strategically formed, and two, that your cluster experience is the best that it can be. So that's something that really surprised me. And I'm thankful to CBS for making it so great.
I think for me, what surprised me was just how many different ways you can solve a problem. I think, the admissions team does a really great job of admitting students who are truly great people. Like they have great backgrounds, but they truly want to help people. They have such great insight into such a variety of different areas. Like for example, like I said, we do a lot of the case study method at Columbia, as well as, hands-on learning. And so to just hear all of everyone's different perspectives and the amount that I'm learning from different cultures, I certainly has surprised me. I kind of expected, okay, there's going to be a lot of people from finance, or I wasn't quite sure how diverse people were going to be, and just how welcoming everyone was going to be, because I was a little nervous, coming in with COVID. Am I going to make friends? Like, how is this going to work? And I think just, having the teacher ask a question and to hear everyone's different answers just based on their own backgrounds and how they think. And it just really opened my eyes, like just how many ways you can come to a solution of a problem from so many different aspects, that that's something I'll carry with me forever.
Yeah, so when I was applying to B school and really making a choice of B school, culture and fit for me was really important. It was super important, and probably one of the single biggest aspects of my decision-making process. And from attending events like this and talking to alumni, talking to current students, I got a really good sense about the collaborative culture at CBS. And B school often has this reputation of being cutthroat, and that hasn't been my experience at CBS. I never expected it to be, based on all the conversations I had beforehand. But what surprised me was just how collaborative I guess the experience is, and how people go out of their way to help you out. And there's really a culture of paying back and paying forward at CBS. The second year students are very interested in giving their time to help first year students when they're recruiting. There was an example where there was a CPA in my cluster who did additional tutorials to help students who didn't come from an accounting background, to help them get through the accounting core. And even things like, now that I have a CBS email, when I reach out to an alum, there's never been a single alum who hasn't emailed me back. So it was just surprising how willing people are to give their time and to help you out.
And I would kind of just add that given that I was an alum, from some years ago, but then returned to CBS about 8 years ago. I mean, one of the big things that surprised me to some degree is, CBS was very heavily more of a finance school, right? Back years ago, still very strong in finance, but it's more about the diversity of where people are going with this degree, and also the appreciation I'm seeing from an employer side of the MBA skill set that really is the part that also really kind of surprised me. So whether it is from large corporates to startups, and even the rising interest in entrepreneurship, working in startups, even doing internships in startups, and even in the social impact space that students have and really wanting to make impact, I feel like what you can do with the MBA and the Columbia MBA and the skill set has really just expanded in a way that it surprised me.
And I think actually thinking about what you're adding, Mike, as an alum, the school really is a gift that keeps on giving. You think about return on investment. At Columbia, you can actually audit classes for the rest of your life as an alum. And so, whereas when Mike was going to school or I was going to school, some of the classes didn't exist at that point. There was leading diversity in organizations as an example that I, as an alum, was able to audit because it didn't exist. I was able to audit as an alum. I approached the wonderful late Kathy Phillips as a faculty when I heard about the class and said, may I audit your class? I would really love to, one, see the students in action, to obviously benefit from your wise teachings. And she was gracious enough to let me audit the class, and Jordan would come sit in on a class with me every once in a while, and people from the admissions team would come and join as well. Michael Robinson, who's on our admissions team, also audited the class when he found out about it too. So having that benefit of the lifelong learning component through Columbia, I think is just a tremendous value add and asset. So not only are you able to come in and audit classes in person, there are classes called Alumni Edge courses, which are taught online. So there's a data analytics class, an intro to Python class that, again, when I was a student, maybe when Mike was a student, those classes weren't taught, but alums can continue to benefit from the teachings of the school and kind of the direction it's headed under Dean Costis Maglaris. So I feel really, really grateful having chosen Columbia as a place where I wanted to pursue an MBA. And we are at time now. Michelle, I'm going to look at the order on my screen. Michelle, Maria, Jordan, Gary, Mike, thank you so much for all of your wonderful insights. It's so great to hear from each of you. Thank you to the folks who have joined from all over the world today in learning a little bit about the J term. Please keep in touch. Reach out if you have questions. I'm going to put in the, I think, Jordan, they see the chat or the Q&A? I'll put in the apply mailbox.
Yep, the chat.
So that everyone can see it. Please reach out if you have questions, and we look forward to being in touch. Thank you so much, and have a great day, morning, evening, wherever you are.